The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the second in today's webinar series. We're going to be looking in more detail at an interesting area around mobile working. I know that many of you that are on this session were on an earlier session with me. I've had a cup of coffee and a gargle, so my voice is refreshed, ready to go for another hour. Because we've got quite an overlap in terms of attendees, I'm going to probably whistle through some of the earlier content a little more quickly than I would do otherwise. But I don't want to go completely ignore that, because we have got some new attendees that weren't with us this morning or earlier this morning. Anyway, before we do that, just a few FAQs and some housekeeping items. We're recording this session. We're recording it so that we can share it with you afterwards, which means you can share it with your colleagues. So in an on-demand context, we will share slides. My colleague Rachel will talk more about Rachel's role in a minute. We'll send those out to you, make them available for download from our website. If you want to do something in person, you want to speak to us in more detail, we're also happy to do that. We do a lot of on-site visits and due diligence visits and meetings where we share more detailed demos than we're able to get through in a session like this. So don't hesitate or be shy about asking us to engage in more detail if you like what you see. Questions, so an important practical point. I mentioned my colleague Rachel is enabling and facilitating this session this morning, so you're going to be hearing from me for most of the next 45 minutes, but Rachel is in the background helping with questions. We mute everybody's lines on these events because most of you are in probably open plan offices. There might be a bit of background noise which is beyond your control, so we put everyone on mute so that it's a nice quiet environment and you can hear me properly. So if you do want to ask questions, use the chat facility, which is at the bottom-most pane of your console for the GoToMeeting login, and you can direct your questions either to everybody if you want to share them, or to Rachel specifically. Rachel will do her best to answer them. Sometimes we get into a question series that's a bit more detailed and can practically be handled in their kind of chat format. So we might lift that offline and follow up with you separately, but Rachel will let you know if that is the case. But we'll do our best to answer questions in session, whatever they might be. So there's some of the housekeeping rules. Agenda, for those of you who have attended our webinars on previous occasions, this will be quite familiar to you now. A little bit of background to public sector challenges. I'm going to move through that pretty quickly this morning. Introduction to account services, I will also move through that quite quickly. And I'll focus on the demonstration of the platform with a specific view to our mobile working capabilities. And I've talked about the function of the chat facility for asking questions directed at Rachel, please. So, public challenges to public service delivery. You will know these well. You're living and breathing them, as are we, albeit through a slightly different perspective as a vendor. We only work with local authorities, so we're having to help our clients and our prospective clients manage how best to address a lack of cash, a lack of resources, and ever-increasing customer expectations. Not easy challenges to resolve, but we haven't got much choice but face them as a public service realm, and as providers to the public service realm, we need to kind of get with the programme on that. Part of the challenge is technological, part is organisational. One of the big, I suppose, challenges that we've seen from our customers is not only their need to plug in effective, cost-effective, useful technology to help them automate and become more efficient, but how do you break down some of those internal barriers where the service area over the last 10, 15 years has become very focused on its own day-to-day activities and doesn't often look over the proverbial garden fence to its neighbours to see how you can share best practice and so on, and also busy investing in their own IT and their own admin functions, which gets expensive when you start to overlap all those things. Specific challenges off the back of that more siloed approach: high cost of ownership from a data, admin and systems point of view. You end up with data all over the place from a GDPR point of view, which is a very important consideration at the current time and will continue to be. And from a customer service point of view, things can feel very different when you do deal with waste, to when you deal with social care, to when you deal with education services, if your organisation runs education services, or any other service area that you might mention. It's nice to have a consistent feeling for customers, and that was what we were focusing on in the prior session. How have local government responded to that? Well, they've responded to it, I would say, and I spend a lot of time speaking to colleagues in local government who are managing these issues in real time, day to day. reorganizing yourselves and reorganizing and restructuring yourselves to create a more effective pan-organizational customer service layer displayed at the top here, whilst at the same time making sure that you've got, at the very least, a minimum viable service at the service delivery area. But really, the aspiration here is to deliver a good and a quality and a comprehensive service. And I have to say, in my experience, most of the local authorities are doing that. And your IT colleagues, who may or may not be on this call, are busy trying to consolidate systems, get their hands around data, making sure that you're fully GDPR compliant in terms of process, system storage, data security, and so on. And at the same time as doing all of that, not forgetting that you've got, tens of thousands of customers at the very least that you're servicing and providing valuable and much valued services to. So let's not forget those customers in the middle of all these things. There's particularly with the mobile working piece, there's another component to the delivery of internal process digitisation that we think about as digitisation and rules-based processes. So if you can avoid human intervention, human contact in one of the sort of service types that falls within the normal range, it isn't some sort of extreme or unusual event, then why not automate it would be our challenge to you. And we'll show you approaches and processes for doing that. If you can get those pieces right, get your organisation structured right, what are the positives of that approach? Well, you'll get a more consistent set of processes that are easier for customers to navigate and that they're not only willing to use, but they want to use. If they can avoid, these days, if we can avoid picking up the phone and waiting a queue to be answered and speaking to someone, we probably will. We'll go online and we'll do it. You can help your colleagues in IT and your own colleagues in your service area or in your kind of broader organisation to make sure that you've got your hands around that data and that it's lower cost to maintain and you've got less systems to manage, whilst maintaining a good quality, viable service for your customers to use. That enables me to map the bit that we're going to be looking at today, technology-wise, to that organisational stack. We spent an hour earlier this morning looking at self-service and CRM in the back office. We won't be focusing on it today. We'll touch a little bit on modules and integration and how an integrated suite works at the kind of line of business side. But we will be focusing more specifically in the next 45 minutes on the mobile worker piece and how you make mobile working work for your organisation. It's certainly been our experience that we've worked with customers. We've got 51 customers in the UK, all of whom are local authorities, all of whom use our technology and our services in different ways. There's obviously overlap between them, but slight variations on a theme. And we've probably seen the biggest return on investment around the mobile worker piece, to be completely frank with you. It's amazing how many wrinkles an organisation can iron out of its internal processes with relatively modest adaptations to, and as you move over to a digital process, you can simplify, shorten, and make less expensive processes. You can automate them. You can make folks more efficient. And in some ways, whilst not as visible as the customer-facing self-service piece, it often delivers a quicker and a bigger return on investment in the longer run. So it's an interesting characteristic that perhaps we weren't expecting to see when we started working in this area and enabling mobile working capabilities. I'll just expand a few of these out. We spent an hour this morning looking at self-service, so I won't ponder on that. We'll spend a little bit more time on the process automation and the mobile and the module capability that we offer. We offer an end-to-end digital platform that you can use in its entirety if you wish, and a number of our customers do. But you can also deconstruct it, if that's the right word, and use it in a modular fashion. So you can point it at particular problems in particular service areas. And because we're exclusively focused on working with UK local authorities, we've built up a great deal of experience over the last 10 years and a great deal of kind of project experience of implementing. And we've ploughed that back into our product development strategy. So those of you that were with me a couple of hours ago will have seen what our customer portal looks like. But the presence of the technology and the ability to deploy the technology deep into the process internally is something that we've built out over time working with our customers. So we've built what you might consider to be line of business type applications within our platform. So we have a comprehensive capability for managing waste processes, both curbside collections, opt-in collections like green garden waste, sharps and clinical waste, all those sorts of things can be configured and run in the platform end to end. And that goes right through to things like route planning and optimization. We offer a license and contracts management module. That means if customers are signing up to a repeated paid for service, think about trade waste, think about green garden waste, all of those things can be configured in the platform that make it easier for you to not only allow the customer to sign up from a digital context, but for you then to manage that process in terms of renewal, novation, cancellation, so on and so forth. So you can really make some impressive leap forwards by using our line of business modules. I'm going to be showing you an example that uses our risk management module. For risk management, think about compliance-driven services. So a lot of the time that's regulatory services, and I'll be showing you a process in a moment around food safety inspections and environmental health inspections, and risk and measurement and governance of risk plays an important role in that piece. Schedulings and bookings of appointments and services is another area that we can provide for, and that plays quite closely into mobile working. So I'll be trying to show you an example of that this morning. And I talked a little bit about getting your hands around your data. We also offer a master data management suite of tools that allow you to create that single customer record, get a single view of the customer, and make sure your data is properly governed and all in one place. And if you are responsible anyway for data protection and data governance in your organization, GDPR will be looming large. So master data management becomes more of an issue as you get into those areas. The main event today is around mobile working. I hesitate to separate mobile working out completely because it's just another step in the process around servicing customers and making sure that services are delivered well and efficiently and effectively, and that you're able to save money. But we offer different interfaces in our suite of mobile worker tools. There's a mobile manager interface, a standard mobile worker, which we'll be looking at today. We also offer tools for workforce management and workforce tracking, so on and so forth. Waste Worker is specifically around mobile working, either in cab or in hand, technology for the download and the measurement and tracking of things like collection rounds and so on. So that's what we're going to be focusing on this morning, is the mobile working piece. So at that point, having kept the slides to a minimum, we'll step across and we'll take a look at a couple of demo examples. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of all my scribbles on my slides so they're clean the next time I come to use them. The first thing I'm going to do actually at this stage is we're going to step straight away into a kind of scheduled inspection context. And to do that, I want to share with you my iPad screen because we're stepping now into the role of a council officer, potentially an environmental health officer or other inspection officer. And what I want to do to show you what that experience might look like is to share my iPad screen. So you've got that up on screen now. And what I'm going to do first off is, again, those of you that were with me a little bit earlier will have seen the directory that's popping up on screen now, which shows a selection of some of the branded native mobile applications that we offer to customers. Those branded native mobile applications manifest themselves in two ways. And those two ways are either as a customer, be you a council resident, a resident of the borough, district, unitary area, shire authority, or a council officer of some description, an operative that's perhaps out working in the council area. You can actually create as many profiles as you want on the platform, and the way that the content is surfaced to the user is dependent on your profile and your authentication. So for the purposes of the next few minutes, I'm going to be operating as a council officer, maybe an environmental health officer, carrying out a particular premises inspection. I'm doing that in a digitized format. I'm using my handheld device, in this case an iPad, but we can run these processes. Everything you're about to see runs on iOS devices, so that's Apple devices. We can fully support Android devices, and we can fully support Windows devices. That's both tablet and smartphone. So we support the full gamut. In terms of general popularity in a mobile working context, one of the things that is a consideration is cost of handset. So Android and Windows devices are popular from a mobile working point of view. Android probably just about has the edge on Windows, although Windows has made a significant resurgence recently. So everything you're seeing, I am running on an iOS device on an iPad this morning, but everything you're seeing would have equivalent functionality and equivalent look and feel on any of the other mobile operating platforms. So I'm going to drop into the My Council Services native mobile application. We've invested really from the word go quite heavily in native mobile technology. And we did that for two reasons. One is contemporary usage patterns, as well as using browser-based technology. You know, consumers like to be able to use a dedicated app for certain purposes. But the other real kind of operational reason for sticking with and continuing to develop our native mobile working functionality is that it gives you full offline capability. So if you are a remote worker, you're in a vehicle, you're on foot, you're in an area that is rural and is poorly served with mobile signal, let alone 3G or 4G or wireless connectivity, you can still continue to work. Or if you're in an urban environment, you disappear into the proverbial underpass or stairwell of a building and you lose signal, you can continue to work. So one of the reasons we've stuck with the native mobile application interface is because it offers a very robust and always available offline capability. You will need connectivity, wireless connectivity, 4G, 3G or less, to sync up additional data, but you can continue to work, and that's crucially important in this context. So the native mobile application that I'm using today, I'm actually logged in as under a council officer profile. So whilst I still have access to all sorts of different functionality and capability, so I can go and access, report it, forms if I want to report an issue, but I've got access to a whole bunch of other more privileged content. One of the things that I can see here is mobile worker. I'm also signed in as a mobile manager. So if I'm leading a team, but I'm also carrying my own bag in terms of my own to-do list and task list, I've still got the tools of governance and supervision at my disposal from my device. You'll see a lone worker tab on there, so you can track and check out where your colleagues are in your team. And you can also check in yourself and say, well, I'm disappearing into a situation that maybe potentially presents some risk to me as an individual and as an employee of the council or a third-party contractor. I want to make sure that if I don't check back in 20 minutes, someone comes looking for me. Express worker we talked about. And then I'm going to scroll down actually to a slightly different section, and we're going to run our first processes. I've got a section here called asset inspection. And asset inspection is, as the name suggests, about inspection of assets. So we're going to drop into that environment, and that gives us a couple of options at that point. I can either do a food inspection or an open spaces inspection. Again, everything that you're seeing is derived from configuration on the platform. So the look and feel of the app is completely configurable. I've got some photos set up here, but you can have them as icons. You can have them as individual tiles or horizontal bars. You can have them as different themes and color schemes and so on. So everything you're seeing aesthetically is completely configurable, and everything I'm going to show you functionally is completely configurable. So I'm adopting the role of a council officer in this regard, perhaps an environmental health officer. I've got an inspection at a local food premises in the borough this morning or this afternoon. So I'm going to arrive at the premises and I tap on food inspection. The first thing it does is it populates the form based on my details. So it knows that I'm Bernie Simmons. I'm logged in securely here. Incidentally, folks, all of the data that's held on the platform, on the device, whilst it's held locally, is fully encrypted. So if a device gets lost, no data will be accessible or retrievable because it's fully encrypted to very high standards. We can share more details on our security and encryption if you're interested in that area. And also, any device being used can be managed via an overarching mobile device management suite. So a device could be scrubbed if it was reported lost, for example. Anyway, back to the process we're working on now. So it picks up my officer name. I'm going to select a time of arrival, today at 12:19. Who's the person that's greeted me? We might say it's Mary Brown. It could be anybody. Equally, if there are asset details attached to a particular asset, you can pre-populate all of that. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Click on done. What's Mary's position? We'll say she is the shift manager. And click on next. And then having clicked on next, that then takes us into the details of the inspection proper and the premises that we're inspecting. So if we click on premises name, first of all, it asks us for a type of what premises we're looking at. So we'll say it's a food premises. These are all configurable. And what it's leveraging here is an asset database. So if you've got the list of food premises in the borough, in another system, they could be imported into or stored natively in My Council Services and be available for selection by the operative, by the environmental health officer in question. So it's a food premises. And in this example, we'll say it's a restaurant. Again, all of these configuration types and options are completely configurable. You can control them and manage them and change them at any time and create new ones. We'll select a restaurant, and what's the particular restaurant that we're inspecting today? We'll say it's Bean Encounter. So we've just created a simple list. So that's now tethering that inspection or this ensuant inspection to that particular asset. So we'll add that. So we're tethering and adding additional data to the asset. Now we've got a whole bunch of input fields here where we can capture the telephone number, the mobile number, the email address, the website, so on and so forth. If they were present in the asset database that we've now tethered this inspection to, they would be automatically populated. We just haven't completed the data on these records specifically. We can include things like opening hours. So we can select what days they're open. Also, they're not open on a Monday, but they're open every other day of the week. So we're capturing and populating more data on the asset database. We can add opening times. Is the premises licensed after 11 p.m.? We'll say 11 p.m. We'll say yes, it is. And that has a bearing potentially on the risk rating that we might create. We can create details of the customer base, whoever they might be. We'll say they're retail customers, and that's done. We can collect multiples from there. We can collect details on business name and location. All of these form details are completely configurable. We've got a question that relates to the specific processes that we're looking at or working with here. So we're working with HACCP, hazard analysis and critical control points. So we can select that. So we'll say it is under HACCP that this inspection is being done. We can input any other details. So again, all of these forms are completely configurable. We can design them from scratch. You can also share them on the platform so that we operate a form store. So if we're happy with that first page, we'll click on next. And that will then take us into the next page. Imported foods checked. We'll say yes. We can add details there if we want to. If in the interest of time and your sanity, I won't subject you to a load of my clumsy typing. And then we get into some of the risk-based questions proper. So comply with duty of care regarding waste. We'll say yes, they do. Comply with duty of care on oil disposal. We'll say yes. So those of you that are working potentially in these areas in accounts will recognise some of these questions. These are compliance, FSA-driven inspection regime questions. They're not something that we've just made up. Comply with duty of care for food. We'll say yes. Comply with duty of care in other categories. We'll say yes. We can add any details that we like, free text. They can be radio buttons, they can be select lists, so on and so forth. If we want to take a picture of something specific whilst we're carrying out our inspection, we can do that. So we might say we want to use the camera to take a photograph. So I'll take a picture of my glass of water and we'll use that photo. So we can add all sorts of details to the inspection as we go through. And I won't complete all of these forms. We'll click onto the next page. So now we're into some specific details that will affect the hygiene and score rating and therefore the risk rating of this particular inspection process. So we'll say the first question it asks for is food type and handling method. We'll say that the handling is high risk. We can add contextual information around that, but we're assuming this is a trained and qualified environmental health officer conducting this inspection, so they know the details. Method of processing of these food types, we'll say they're high risk activities. Consumers at risk, we'll say a substantial number of consumers could be at risk. Are there vulnerable groups? We'll say no, there are not vulnerable groups in this example. Current compliance structural, we'll say that we're satisfied with that. Confidence in control systems, and we'll say that we've got moderate confidence in control systems based on our inspection. Risk of contamination, we'll say there's significant risk given the processes I seem to have lost the connection. Rachel, I've been staring at my screen for the last few minutes while I've been completing this inspection. When did my iPad disappear off screen?
Sorry, I'm on mute. We can see your screen.
Can you see my iPad?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. So I just did expect it's disappeared off screen for me for some reason. I'll just try and get that back. I use a third-party piece of technology for screencasting my iPad screen, and it seems to be playing up a little bit. It's working well this morning.
Yeah, we can see now that it's frozen and gone off.
Okay, bear with me a second, folks, while I restart Reflector and see if we can get that working again. Thanks, Rachel. Sorry to put you on the spot. Okay, so I'm back in the game, which is good. So I don't know how long I was quite happily completing the form around this particular inspection when it wasn't on screen, because I had my eyes down on screen, not up on what I was sharing. So my apologies if you missed some. But we've been through a step of processes that are very specific in terms of what's required from a food standards agency on a premises inspection. So we said there's high-risk activities, substantial numbers of consumers at risk, no vulnerable groups, and we'll set current compliance with hygiene. We'll say that we are satisfactory. Current compliance structure will say satisfactory. We've got moderate confidence in the control systems, and we think there's significant risk of contamination if these things are not done properly. And then at that point, we're going to click on submit, and it will bundle up all of that compliance inspection-based information that we've created. And it will submit it to the central system securely and in encrypted form. So the content and the data is encrypted on the device. We use transport layer security 1.2 for all data in transit, so it's encrypted during transit. There's private public key encryption in terms of it meeting with and authenticating that data when it arrives at the central system. So we've got end-to-end encryption of data, so there's security in that regard. So what we've been able to do in the last few minutes is run an inspection program using an entirely digital process. That would normally and historically have been done with a paper process. So what we're going to do for the moment then is go back to the back office and just take a quick look at that. And then we're going to run a couple of other mobile working processes. So we'll be jumping backwards and forwards between the back office environment and my iPad. All will continue to work properly, I hope. So if I just jump across to the back office environment first off, I'm going to log in under my authenticated details as a council officer. So what we're seeing here is nothing that a customer would see. This is the back office environment. We log in. And so the first screen that we see is what we call service desk. So I've got a view of a whole bunch of place-based services here, fly tips and book and pay for bulky item uplifts and so on and so forth. I'm going to filter that view because what I'm interested in is not our reported detail. I'm actually interested in our food and building inspections detail. I'm specifically interested in food inspections. So I'm going to recut that detail based on what I'm interested in looking at from a service desk point of view. And if I drop into that, you will see that we're now looking at the history of food inspections that we've carried out this morning. And the one that we've done most recently, today at 12:27, I just submitted as part of this demonstration, is a food inspection which now has a service request number attached to it, 150669. So if I drop into that, then that allows me to view the full-fledged detail of that particular inspection. So I can see my name as the officer that completed the inspection, the person that I was in contact with, that Mary, the person I was in contact with and that greeted me at the premises was a shift manager. It was a food premises, that it was a restaurant called Bean Encounter, which is registered on our asset database, that it's open Tuesday through Sunday, closed on Mondays. It's licensed after 11 p.m. This is an HACCP, so looking for critical control point governance and hazards therein. They were using imported foods, but they complied with their duty of care, so on and so forth. So we can see all of those details of that particular inspection, how I measured the risk, so on, throughout the inspection, and quite an involved inspection process, what time it was done, so on, what device was used, so on and so forth. If I then scroll down, I get a full list of everything that's been done to that particular inspection at any given point in time. And if I scroll down a little bit further, you'll also see that the food hygiene rating, the Food Standards Agency required food hygiene rating, has also been calculated for me. So that the form that I was using on the device is not just a dumb e-form that's capturing data and then holding that data. That data that I've captured has particular weights and scores against it, and that's using the Food Standards Agency guidelines and compliance process to calculate that food hygiene rating. Where we've deployed this for customers, that form and the graphic that you see there can then automatically go to print the certificate that the premises would display in the window. It would also go on to create the automated written report that's then emailed back to the customer, and a version of which is stored against the record. So you can really automate that end-to-end process. So what I've been doing there is using My Council Services mobile worker and its e-form capability to create the form. I've been using the My Council Services risk module as a configured process to take the scores and the entries into that form when the environmental officer captures it, to publish and create the food hygiene rating as officially recognised by the Food Standards Agency. And then the downstream automated process can create all of the necessary printed and electronic outputs and reports and certificates that can then be automatically dispatched to the premises owner and stored for record keeping purposes by the council. And equally, having completed that inspection, assuming that maybe that triggers an automatic inspection in another 3 months, because we'd like them to see them at a 4 or 5. So we're able to automate all of that downstream kind of scheduled inspection and work. So I shared that example, which uses a combination of technology and modules within the platform to provide an end-to-end digital process for food safety inspections. You could employ that process for any other inspection regime within the council, be it a standard health and safety inspection, be it a vehicle inspection, for a waste vehicle, pre going out on to do its collections in the morning, or whatever it might be. But that's one example of a fairly complex and involved process, compliance-driven regulatory services process that can be configured end-to-end on the platform and used end-to-end. What I want to do now in the remaining sort of 15, 20 minutes or so is just show you how mobile worker can be used in a slightly more ad hoc way, and a couple of examples of that. So to do that, I'm going to take us back to the customer self-service interface. Those of you that were with me this morning will recognise this interface, but what I've jumped across to here is an environment that's really about the customer using and accessing digital services that are supplied by the council online or via an iPad or a smartphone. I'm not going to explain it in detail. I'm happy to get into more detailed discussions offline if you're not familiar with this or work with us this morning. But I'm using the My Account portal just to use some e-form functionality. And what I want to do is I actually want to find my bulky item uplift form. So I'm just going to search that using the context-sensitive search. I'm going to type the word bulky item into the search bar, and that says, well, there is a form that matches that search term. It's called Book and Pay for Bulky Item Collection. So well, that looks like the form for me as a customer. I'm a registered customer, so I'm logged in as a user. I could be using this as a guest and be unregistered. You could make it available just as an individual form, but this is a paid-for process for this particular example in this particular demo council. So I'm going to select that form. My council service then will drop the user directly into that form, so I haven't got to navigate to it. And I'm then into a five-step form, a five-step process to go and book and pay for a bulky item collection. So the first choice I'm given is I can either do it for me at my home address. Because I'm a registered customer, it knows who I am. It knows I'm logged in this morning as Gary Wilcox at 78 Grovehill in London. And then the next thing I can do is select my slot. If I was booking this for maybe my mother, who also lives in the borough, but she wanted me to organise it for her, or perhaps my elderly neighbour, I can also select to identify another person's address. And then I can then pay and arrange for a bulky item collection for a friend or a relative if I wanted to do that. The way that you set these forms and processes up is entirely up to you. All of this can be designed from scratch. But if it's for me, from my home address, it knows who I am. Then all I need to do is select slots. So this part of the process is actually using the bookings and appointments engine that we have within the platform. So it's saying there are actually slots available for today. There's a domestic collection service, and you can book a slot for 2 o'clock. So having selected the slot that I want, I've then got various options open to me. So I can select what it is I want to be collected, up to 3 different items at £12 per item. So I'll say, well, I want fridge or other white goods to be collected. And actually, I've got them in the house. I don't fancy lifting them out to outside my property, so I'm going to pay an extra £3.50 to have the council worker or the contracted third party come in to remove those from the house. And it will gradually, as it goes, total up the cost of that transaction. That's £15.50 in this case. I'm going to click on select, and that then gets written back into the transaction. So we're using the self-service capability of the My Account portal, and we're using the appointments and bookings scheduling engine that we've got as part of the platform to enable the booking of a time-based appointment and a resources-based allocation. Click on next at that point. I can upload a picture of the issue if I want to. We perhaps wouldn't do that, but just for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm sure I've got something suitable here. So we'll say white goods for collection. There's a sorry-looking fridge. Click on next, and then it's bumping into a payment process. So we're integrated into payment at this point. So we're using a test payment gateway. You can deploy these for any purposes. So I'll whistle through this fairly quickly because some of you would have seen this morning. But we'll put into the detail Gary's details. Well, put in some card details here, some test card details, and an expiration date and verification code. So all of the processing of the payment is being handled by the payment card industry compliant payment gateway, not My Council Services. So we've done a secure handshake with that through integration with that payment gateway, and we're now allowing that piece of technology to do its thing. Once it's completed and collected the payment, it will hand us back securely to the environment that we were working in. So from a customer's point of view, it's completely seamless. They don't ever have to navigate away from the website. They just have to put their card details in. If for some reason those card details were declined, if your payment gateway allows a second attempt with a different card, we can facilitate all of those sorts of permutations and iterations of a process. We then click on next, and we then click on submit. So Gary at that point has submitted his bulky item collection request. He's paid for it, so it's authenticated. From the customer's point of view, if he drops into his service request view, he will see that there is a service request number 150670 on the 21st of the 3rd of 2018 at 12:37. That has now been accepted and is in the system. So the customer's done their bit. So I don't want to dwell too long on the customer self-service interface. Let's jump back to the My Council Services back office and go back into Service Desk. And we can see the food inspection one that we were looking at earlier. But if I recut that view and say, well, we want to look at report it, and I want to look at book and pay for bulky item and search for that. All things being well, and they are in this case, we can see that Gary's most recent request now exists as a service record and a service request in the database. So in real time, Gary used the browser-based interface to raise that request and pay for it. It's an authenticated request. We can now drop into that, and we can use that for automating downstream processes. So there's a couple of things I want to do at that point. We can see all of the payment details that the payment's been accepted. So if I'm the person responsible for administering within the waste function, paid for bulky item collection, I can see that the payment's accepted, Gary's paid for it, I can see what's got to be collected, scheduled in for a particular time. We can also see that a particular task to complete the pickup of the bulky waste item has already been created by the system. So we're using an automated rules engine on the platform to automatically create that and assign that out. I'm actually going to go and do something manually at this point because I want to show you what that end-to-end process looks like. I'm going to go and create an additional collection task on top of the one that's automated. I'm going to assign it to myself because I want to show you some of the more detailed steps around that. So we're going to create another task. We're going to assign it to a person. We'll make the person the owner. I'm going to make myself the owner in this case. I'm going to say complete collection and customer signature. We're going to call it a work order. As well as the person that's the primary contact on this, I'm also going to make myself the owner. So you can diversify in terms of who's responsible for what with any processes. I'm going to copy across the details as they exist. And we can also add things like time. If you want this to be an ongoing, repeatable task, you can create repeated tasks and so on and so forth. I'm not going to do any of that at this stage. I'm just going to click on add for this particular task and having created that task. And then if I scroll down, you'll see now we've got 2 tasks against that, one of which is assigned to me at 12:40. So I've done that manually. You could create any of this all in an automated way as a set of rules. And I'll show you where you can do that in the last few minutes of the session this morning. The other thing that's going on here is a whole bunch of audit trail, time stamping, date stamping, user stamping activity, right from when the service request was submitted to its initial status, to its confirmation is being sent back to Gary, the customer. The owner was changed to me automatically. We then added an additional task to me manually. So that everything that's done by any different user is automatically captured. So if there is ever a steward's inquiry on what happened or what went wrong with the process, should that happen, you've got comprehensive audit trail data, on everything that you've done as a local authority in terms of supporting that capability. So where are we in the work process? The customer has used the self-service interface to create and pay for a bulky item uplift request. It's a paid-for service at this pretend council. We've then assigned that that service request out to a particular user, which is me, and I've also created another specific task, which is the collection of the item and capturing the customer signature as a part of that process. So how do I then go and collect that as a mobile worker? Well, that's where we're going to go next. So I'm going to put my trust in my piece of third-party technology again to share my iPad screen. So let's see if I can pull that back up on screen for you. Seem to like it. Let's try again. Okay. There we go. So my iPad screen is back up on screen. I'll go back into the My Council Services app. This time, instead of going down to asset selection, asset inspections, which is where we started with our first example of a compliance-driven process, a regulatory service in food safety inspections, I'm going to go to the mobile worker environment. So I'm going to tap on mobile worker. And I'm going to go to service request, and if I just refresh the screen, what we should see happen, so I've got connectivity, you can see that service request, Gary's most recent request for and payment for booking and paying for bulky item collection as a service request, has been assigned to me. So I can see all of the details around that. I can see the picture that he uploaded of what it is I've got to go and deal with. It should be coming up on screen for you in a second. There we go. And I can pinch and zoom on that, so I know whether it's a safe single-person lift or whether I need a colleague with me or whatever it might be. So I'm getting my service request list associated to me. But I can also see, as well as service requests, I can see the more detailed data of any particular task that's been assigned to me. So go and look at tasks, and you'll see that whilst I was refreshing that, it's also downloaded the task complete with my typo, complete with an extra bracket, collection and capture customer signature. So if I drop into that, what I might want to do then is say, well, I've removed the item. I know it's already paid for. I'm at the right location with the customer. I've got confirmation of when it was due to be collected. So that piece of work is done. So I'm going to go to my menu and I'm going to change the status of this. I'm going to click on status and we're going to move straight from open and scheduled to closed. So the system reminds me, do you want to change the task state? So I'm going to say, yes, I do. And then what it prompts me to do, because this is a collection that requires and a service delivery and completion that requires customer signature, I've then got the ability within the system to capture Gary, the customer who's paid for the service's signature electronically. So we'll get Gary to do that. So we'll type rather clumsily Gary's name, and we'll put a date on that, which is the 21st of the 3rd, 18. We'll save that item, and then If I want to write that back to the central database, I could be offline at this point without signal and have done all of that work. But if I want to write that back, once I've got signal, I can click, I can swipe down, and it will automatically refresh the data and write any updates and changes to that particular task and my service request back to the central database. It will also cycle through that periodically whilst it's got connection. So you don't have to do that as a proactive act. It will automatically sync up if it's got connection over time, every 5 minutes or so, and you can set the frequency of that. So I've got the ability from within Mobile Worker to look at not just my service requests, but specific tasks that are assigned to me, cases that are assigned to me, any asset inspections that are assigned to me, product-related issues that are assigned to me. This can be configured in any particular way that I want. If I go back to service requests, there are a few other things that I can do. I can have a map view of all of my service requests, an auto route view. So if I want a map view, I tap on map view and it will show me where all my service requests are. This will demonstrate to you how limited my memory is for London postcodes. But I can get that map view, I can get the list view, I can get an auto route view. So if I'm in a vehicle and I'm driving from place to place, it will automatically give me a Google Drive view. I can pick work, reject work, so on and so forth. I've got all sorts of different controls that are open to me as a mobile worker. And again, all of that is configured based on my profile and my preferences and my capabilities or my privileges as a user. So last couple of bits and pieces then, we're going to jump back to the back office because we've been quite busy as a mobile worker. And we've done our first inspection, which was a compliance-driven process. We've done now a bit of ad hoc mobile working. So if I go back to that service desk view, and we look at Gary Wilcox's bulky item collection that he requested that I've now dealt with, if I drop back into the detail of that, I can see all of the records as I could previously. It should be on screen for you now. And then if I scroll down, we did some particular work on a particular task. So that was the task that was assigned to me. So I'll drop back into that task. And just while the screen refreshes, if I scroll down, you can then see that the customer's signature for Gary Wilcox is now added to that record. So as I make changes as a mobile worker, remote from the office, remote from a desk, potentially at periods without connectivity, I'm dealing with the customer, I'm completing and updating statuses, I'm potentially adding other evidence and capturing other data from the customer, including a signature in this case, that is now all written back. So it's minimizing the need for human intervention. It's removing the need for a paper chase and a paper trail around some of these internal processes. And in doing all of those things, it's significantly driving efficiency, which is really what the mobile worker piece is all about, as I mentioned earlier. Just to finish up, there are a couple of bits and pieces that I'd like to share with you, if I may. So I'll just jump back across to the administration function. And there's a few bits and pieces I'd like to share. One of the areas that I want to draw your attention to is the rules engine. So we've seen some examples of rules of automated assignment of service requests to users. That happened around the service request piece. You can create rules using a full workflow and an automated engine. Rules are searchable. They can be created. They don't require any particular technical or coding skill. What you need to understand is the process that you're trying to automate. So they can be done, within a service area or someone with business analyst type capabilities. You don't need to be a developer to work with our rules engine. You're using a graphical user interface to build up the rules. So the condition of the rule, the particular activity that you want, when you want it to happen, when a service request is submitted, so on and so forth. We've got customers that have got maybe hundreds of different rules running in their systems, and they can manage and monitor those in any way that they want. The whole of the My Council Services mobile working functionality is configurable. You've got the ability to create different types of tasks with different priority settings, different life cycle statuses. So the whole thing can be governed and tweaked and managed by you internally. You're not on the hook back to us as a provider for changes. If you want us to help you with form design or with process mapping and configuration tasks, we can certainly do those things, but you don't have to be. As much as possible, we are trying to enable you to be self-sufficient so that you don't need to circle back to us when you want to make minor changes or significant changes to the system. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of what's the art of the possible from a mobile working point of view. I realise I've skipped through quite a lot of content quite quickly. What I want to do in the last couple of minutes is just finish off with the last few slides. So I'll just take the last couple of minutes of your time and then get on with the rest of your Wednesday afternoon. Our general principle and our kind of mantra here is use self-service when it makes sense to, automate when it makes sense to, And our end of the bargain is keeping things cost effective and making sure that you can implement them in one place today, but you can scale that across the organisation as your confidence in the platform grows. We offer, as well as the interfaces that I've shown you, the asset inspections process, scheduled jobs process, and the ad hoc working. We offer a particular interface for mobile waste workers. So that's the downloading of waste collection programs. That's the interface of our mobile working platform with our waste module platform. A full mobile working capability with calendar-based functions, as I've showed you on the device this afternoon. We didn't really touch on Mobile Manager. That's really a supervisory set of tools to find unallocated tasks, allocate them out to the nearest worker, so on and so forth. We offer an express worker. So if you're wanting to log collected bins or missed bins as you're going around on a waste round, you would use our express worker interface. We're also just about to deploy, as part of our waste module, a mobile working suite, route planning, route optimization, and real-time tracking. So that's another module that's coming online as part of the waste module functionality. I mentioned our lone worker capability, so that's setting of check-in times and workforce tracking, and overall workforce management. So when are people on shift, off shift, when are we tracking them, when aren't we tracking them? We also offer integration to third-party applications. I've showed you an example in this afternoon session of integration into Payment Gateway. There's some examples on screen. We've done lots and lots of payment integrations for different types of processes. Once we've done that payment integration, that's available for any other process that you might want to use it for. So it's available then as a plugin that can be called in any other form. And certainly around the mobile working piece, there are often legacy systems that you may want to continue to use, or you may want to sort of gradually offboard from them. And in those instances, you often want to integrate to them. So I've just popped up on screen a selection of some of the integrations that we've done, and many around waste and line of business applications for street scene and so on, and highways. So lots and lots of examples of where the My Council Services platform has been used for automation of internal and customer-facing processes, and where we've been tightly integrated with another third-party system in another part of the organisation. So just to finish things up, really our kind of approach with these things is to offer affordable solutions that can scale, solutions that are flexible, so you can configure them to match your process, not to have to force fit your process to our technology capability, where you might want to start using them in one service area, but you might then want to quickly scale to other service areas. So that scalability piece is crucial, and also our support is often crucially important. It depends how much you want and how self-sufficient you want to be, but our support services are there to the extent that you require them and want to use and invest in them. I've shared a quick list of current customers. We've got 51 customers currently in the UK, all local authorities. There's a selection of them on screen there. I won't read those back to you. Rachel will be making the slides available for download from our website. And also, if you can bear to listen to another 55 minutes of my voice, the recording will be available for you and your colleagues to re-watch if you've enjoyed it and want to find out more. And then I'll just finish off by saying our contact details are on screen. Please don't hesitate to get in contact. We'd love to have a more detailed conversation with you about any of the areas that we've covered in today's webinars. And it just remains for me to say thank you very much for tuning in and listening this morning. We hope you found it informative and useful, and don't hesitate to get in contact if you'd like to speak in more detail. Thanks, folks. Have a good Wednesday. Bye now.